Have you ever noticed why your YouTube ads load faster and in full HD than YouTube videos? Well, actually, there is some great engineering going on. Let's start at the beginning, at how the internet works and is supposed to work. The internet is built on two things, a client and a server. A client asks something on the internet, and the server serves that over the internet. The server that serves the request is called an origin server, and the client is simply called a client. The client asks for some data through transferring data. This transfer is called a request, and the server responds to the request and transfers the requested data. This transfer is called a response. Pretty reasonable naming. Now let's talk about the transfer. Let's say a server is 5 kilometers away from the client. So there is a physical distance between them. And data, even though you can't see it, is still a physical thing. So there has to be some physical transfer going on. That means your data, that is the request, has to travel 5 kilometers to the server. The server's response also has to travel 5 kilometers back to you. Even though this transfer happens nearly at the speed of light, it still does take some time. And if the server is, let's say, in another part of the world, it would take a real amount of time. But how could you transfer your data to another part of the world? Unconventionally, to make that physical transfer, you may want to make a connection with the server through a wire or maybe some antenna. But the problem is, there are thousands of servers out there that you may want to transfer data with. And I can spin up a server right now, which you can't access right away because you don't have any connection. And how the fuck can you wire up your iPad with a server in another part of the world? We can't do that. Instead, we pay a company our money who identifies themselves as the internet service provider and who allows us to transfer data between all the servers out there. Many devices are connected to an ISP, making a network. And these ISPs are connected with other ISPs, making a bigger network, also known as the internet. And any two devices in this network can transfer data between them. Pretty cool. But we have a problem. If two devices are thousands of kilometers apart, it would take a long time to transfer any data. What can be done? Well, something cool can be done. Remember when I said that when a client makes a request, the request travels all the way to the server and the server then responds? Now, what is 1 + 1? Let's assume you don't know this. Now, would you ask the answer from your math teacher, whose house is in a different block and who taught math to everyone? Or would you ask this to your nearest educated person, like your mom or uncle? I mean, sure, your math teacher is probably the source of the answer, but your math teacher already taught the answer of 1 + 1 to your mom or uncle, so either of them would give the same answer. So traveling all the way to your teacher is very wasteful, and asking your mom, who is in the next room, sounds like a very reasonable thing to do. Well, the computer kind of does the same thing. We indeed have an origin server, which is located somewhere in a fixed place on the Earth. But we also have a network of many servers across the world. Now, when the origin server provides the same response to one request, the network of many servers remember the response. So when the client makes a request, instead of going to the origin server, the request goes to the nearest server in the network. In this way, a very small physical distance has to be covered for the client to get a response to a request. Every server in this network is known as an edge server, and the whole network is known as the Content Delivery Network, CDN. And remembering the response is known as caching. But this does not answer why YouTube ads take so little time to load and can be loaded at a very high quality. Data travels in a sequential order, like a train. Every bit of the data is next to the previous bit, like a bogie of a train. By having an edge server near the client, we can transfer the first bit a few milliseconds faster compared to if it were in another part of the world. So is it all about a CDN just to make it a few milliseconds faster? Well, no. Remember when I said you are connected to an ISP and your ISP is connected to other ISPs, forming the internet? How do they connect to other ISPs? It is also painful for them to wire themselves with all the ISPs of the world. To solve this problem, an ISP has two options. An ISP can either use a transit provider. There are different transit providers in the world that connect different ISPs to each other. A transit provider has connection to other ISPs through the second method I will tell shortly. Or they have connections to another transit provider. Let's say you're in Ohio and your ISP's transit provider is somewhere in Europe. Now, when you want to transfer data to someone in Singapore, your data will first travel to Europe, to the transit provider, then to the person in Singapore. So internet transit works pretty much like airplane transit. But if you want to transfer some data to someone in Kentucky, your data will first be transferred to Europe, to the transit provider, and then it will come back to Kentucky, assuming both are using different ISPs. Even though the actual destination is a few hundred kilometers away, your data will travel thousands of kilometers. Also, your ISP has to pay the transit provider for every byte it transfers. To solve this, an ISP can use something called an Internet Exchange Point, IXP. An IXP is usually one or many buildings in a specific place where all the local ISPs meet up. They make a connection with each other, similar to how you do with different devices in your router. And your ISP doesn't have to pay for how much data it is transferring. The IXP connection is usually super fast, way faster than using a transit. So instead of traveling to Europe, your data will travel to the IXP and then to other networks to the server. Now, the edge server of a CDN provider also makes a connection in your local IXP. So when data is coming from an edge server, it can be transferred at super high speed. On the other hand, when data is coming from the origin server, and assuming it is in a different country, it will use a transit, which will usually have a lower transfer speed. Now, most of the YouTube ads are provided from an edge server because the ads have already been cached in an edge server. But not all YouTube videos can be cached in all edge servers, only those that are being viewed often in a specific region. For example, when a video is uploaded to YouTube, YouTube will store it on the main server. Now, if the video is being watched in the USA often, YouTube will then cache it in the USA edge server, so it can be transferred at a high speed. But someone in India can't watch it at high speed because their ISP has to use a transit to get that video, as it hasn't been cached in India's edge server. Cloudflare is one of the best CDN providers out there. Cloudflare is also free, which is kind of mind-blowing in this economy. Cloudflare serves around 80 million requests per second, and somewhere around 20% of the world's internet traffic goes through Cloudflare. That's why many companies totally rely on Cloudflare. This is not a problem by itself, but if Cloudflare fails for some reason, which happened a few days ago, all of the websites that are using Cloudflare will be inaccessible. That explains why YouTube can show ads at high speed and at high quality, even with poor internet speed. By distributing the server throughout the world and choosing the right path to transfer your data, you can be served ads at a very high speed alongside some content.